protection. Our goal is to help businesses and consumers get the information they need to succeed by sharing advanced advice and stories from Chicago's entrepreneurs. Chicago's architecture is world renowned. Whether you are a resident or visitor, our skyline is one to marvel, as well as our beautiful Chicago River and our Great Lake Michigan. One way to do so is by relaxing on a tour guided cruise on the Chicago River. Joining us today is Holly Agra, chairman and founder of Chicago's First Lady Cruises and Mercury, Chicago's Skyline Cruiseline. Good afternoon, Holly, and thank you for joining us, in particular on what is absolutely a spectacular hot summer day, which is a great day to be either on the river or on the lake on one of your cruise lines.
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the days where you really appreciate cooler by the lake.
Right, exactly. So let's get started. Chicago's First Lake Cruises and Mercury Chicago's Skyline Cruise Line are well-known attractions in the city of Chicago for locals and visitors, and have been in business for 85 years. So I would consider you a Chicago legacy business. Can you talk about how the company was started and its impact on the city of Chicago?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, my husband's grandfather emigrated from Portugal to Chicago. He was an out-of-work plumber who happened upon a passenger boat for 6 passengers. And he went out to the Tippin Navy Pier and he started selling boat rides, 6 people per boat for 25 cents each. And the boat went fast, and the idea was to get cool because it was just sort of in the beginning or middle of the Depression, and people didn't have air conditioning, and they really didn't have a lot of things to feel happy about. So they came down to the lakefront, and for just 25 cents, they could take a ride and get cool. We didn't have too much of a skyline back then, but the lake was cool. And it wasn't very crowded at all, not like today.
Right. No, that's
so in the 1940s, he had the vision to move to the Chicago River, and he created a dock both at Michigan Avenue and State Street, and got a little bit larger boats that carried 40 passengers, and then a larger one that carried 100, and then 2 boats that carried 100. And people were shopping on State Street, shopping on Michigan Avenue, and the skyline was growing and developing, and the business started to flourish. Now, it was really hard times where everyone in the family had to work, and everyone had to work from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer. So there were no days off, there were no vacations, and don't even think about getting sick. So it was a hard time, but they had a few employees, and they just started to grow a little bit bigger each year. And unfortunately, when my husband, he started working in the business at 15, but at 18, his father passed away, and being an only child, he had to take over the business. So this was a pretty big undertaking for, a new high school graduate. So he did what he had to do to keep the business going. He had a few great employees. And then he and I got married at a young age, 20 and 21. And we worked hard together and had an idea to expand the business into something with larger boats and also offer food and beverage. And luckily for us, BMO Harris Bank believed in us, and we were able to get our first loan and build our first boat. Today, we are 32 years since our first boat, Chicago's First Lady, and we now have a fleet of 6. So we're very proud of all of that hard work and all of the hard work of our great employees, many of whom have been with us 10 and 20 years, not to mention our children, who are the 4th generation, our 2 boys, who are now the presidents of each company. And we've transitioned from the third generation to the fourth generation. So we're very proud of that.
That's great. Really great. And what a great history from 25-cent boat rides during the Depression, moving into the river in the 40s, as you said, and now you have bigger lines. Just for our audience and listeners, what's the capacity now in the bigger boats? Just to kind of give them an idea.
Well, we have three extra large boats which carry 250 passengers each. And then we have 2 or 3 boats that are the medium size at 149.
That's great. Okay. Yeah. And since you and your husband kind of took over the business, what model changes did you guys make? Kind of walk that through that under your leadership.
Well, probably the most impactful initiative that we took on was a partnership with the Chicago Architecture Foundation. So they had previously worked for with a few years with another boat company, and they decided they wanted to move to Michigan Avenue, have a little bit more prominent visibility at Michigan Avenue, and work with us because our boats were also more stylish and architecturally significant. So we started working with them in 1993, and we offered 3 tours per day. And the difference between this tour and any other tour is that trained volunteers provide the guided commentary. And these volunteers come from all walks of life. We even are proud to have Dr. Arwady as one of our docents. And they are passionate about architecture. They're passionate about Chicago. And while there is certainly a criteria of what they do need to talk about, each docent gives a little bit different spin on their favorite buildings or favorite stories.
That's great. And do you consider the business seasonal? When does the cruise? Yeah. When is your season tip, or when do you like ideally for your season start and end? And then what happens to these boats in the cold winter when the river is like all ice?
Yes. Well, November, the last in Chicago, we have the Magnificent Mile Lights Festival, which is usually around November 20th, the last Saturday prior to Thanksgiving. And then next day, Sunday, after the Lights Festival, will be our last day every year. And then we close up our summer facility, pack up the boats, and move to 135th and Cottage Grove on the far south side. There we have a maintenance facility at a marina, and we have a really dedicated maintenance team that refresh the boats and keep them as the whitest and brightest vessels in downtown Chicago.
Oh, that's really neat. Hey, did you ever thought about relocating the boats to a warmer climate, or is it just?
We actually did try that. The First Lady went to West Palm Beach in the winter of 1992. It was a 15-day journey, so 7 days down the Mississippi River and 7 days across the state of Florida.
Yeah.
And when we got there, we realized that salt water and salt air is not friendly to steel passenger vessels. So when you see boats down in Florida, they're usually made out of fiberglass and you can hose them down. But for steel vessels, even the salt in the air can pit the steel and create way more maintenance than you would like to deal with. So that, combined with the fact that so many people in Florida have their own boat, it really wasn't a successful venture.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thanks for that.
Yes, and the First Lady was built in Mobile, Alabama. So after she was finished, she sailed 7 days and 7 nights up the Mississippi River to get to Chicago.
That's good. Good. Are all the boats from Mobile, or are they from different?
No, just one from Mobile, one from Florida, and the rest were built in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which is much closer and easier to traverse right up Lake Michigan. And it's great. They have giant buildings. They build the boats inside.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that all of your vessels are operated by the United States Coast Guard licensed captains and crew. Why was this important to have a U.S. Coast Guard operate the vessels when choosing your workforce and where to recruit your workforce?
Right. Well, the Chicago River and Lake Michigan are considered federal navigable waterways. And so in order to operate a passenger vessel where you take on passengers for hire or you charge money to give boat rides, you have to be licensed and inspected by the U.S. Coast Guard. So our captains are highly trained. You must work as a deckhand for over 300 days before you can even take the course to become a captain. So 300 days is really 2 summers because, we're not working year round. So a lot of training. Then once you become a captain and you're in charge of a vessel and a crew, you have to operate training drills, safety drills. So we train for man overboard. We train for fire, of course, which is the single, most scary risk to a boat. We train for terrorism. We train for all types of things. The Coast Guard falls under the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So also our captains have a federal credential called the Transportation Workers Identification Card. So they all receive background checks, and it's a very serious business. They cannot use cannabis at all. And although it's legal in the state of Illinois, it is not legal with the federal government. So any violation of that policy would be, cause for termination. And it really helps ensure the traveling public that the vessels and experience that they're choosing is safe, very much like the airlines. So we're regulated as to the weight of the passengers, the number of passengers, and the training of the crew.
I appreciate that. Leisure boats are becoming more popular, not just in Chicago and our waterway systems, but I think around the country. And I do feel like nationally there's been an uptick in kind of carelessness by just leisure small boats, but could also impact the more commercial vessels trying to do a tour. I don't know if the captains are complaining about this on the river and going out to the lake.
Yes, it's becoming a very crowded waterway, and the best thing that pleasure boat owners can do is when they buy a boat is to take a U.S. Coast Guard course. It's free on how to safely operate their boat.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. We've had a lot of different industries on the Empower Hour, and this is definitely a unique one. Can you tell us about the licensing process? And just for our listeners, BACP licenses all businesses. We've had people from restaurants and all sorts of different types of businesses on, but I don't know that a lot of people realize we license the commercial passenger vessels, which includes water taxis, the tour boats, charter boat cruises, ferries, harbor tenders, etc. And so let's talk a little bit about that to our audience.
Sure. Well, being licensed by the Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Department really benefits us as a business as well as the consumer. So each year we have to forward to the department our routes of service, our rates of service. We have to provide documentation that our captains are licensed. We have to provide our insurance documents. We have to prove that we properly dispose of our waste. And this is really a great service for the traveling public because they really don't have to think about whether or not this is going to be safe.
Yeah.
It's definitely a safe experience. And because our captains are professionals, just like a limo driver or a taxi chauffeur, the city wants to know that they indeed have passed all of the training and certifications necessary. I'll just give you one small example of how it protects businesses. one time I was down at the box office and the first guest had purchased her ticket through a third party where she paid a deposit. And then when she got to the box office, she only paid the balance of the ticket price. So the lady behind her had overheard the price that the first customer paid, and she was having to pay a $10 higher price. So she was upset and didn't understand about the third party policy, and she did report us to the city. And we felt confident that when the city looked up our records, they would indeed see that our price is the price, and help to explain the lady that to the customer that we were not in violation of any rules. So it really does help protect us as well, that the city's aware of everything that we do.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Owning and operating a cruise line is a big financial commitment. Obviously, these big boats are not cheap. What advice can you offer for someone who is just getting started, not necessarily as a future competitor, but just anyone kind of opening up any business, kind of what were some of those life lessons your husband kind of experienced?
Well, definitely the number one piece of advice we would have to offer is loyalty in banking. So when we went to the bank for a loan for the first lady, we had already been customers for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So being a loyal customer, being a customer that they know, really helps you in convincing them to take a risk. And the number two thing is to never give up. But if you do not have a bank in which you've worked with for a long time, the best way you can find banks is to attend community business functions, whether it's with your local chamber or maybe a special service district or even Rotary. There are always bankers that from banks you may not even have recognized, looking for new business and many times new small businesses. So that's a great way to meet bankers and then hopefully convince them to become your customer too.
So going back just a little bit, so you started out with a 6-passenger boat in Depression, moving all the way up to now your larger, bigger fleet. At what point in the business plan, or for how many years did you guys kind of get into the events? Because you guys help customers who are looking to have a wedding on an event, maybe a retirement party, maybe just the annual office get together out on one of the cruises. Tell us a little bit about that in your business planning. How does that make up right now in your overall business plan, and expand on it a little bit?
Thank you for that question. When we the first couple of years that we started, we thought we were going to sell dinner cruises to the general public. So parties of 2 and 4 and 6. And we quickly learned that the vessel was not large enough for that type of, for the volume needed to really make a profit with that type of business. So we decided to just sell the boat to one customer for one event. And that proved to be unique and successful, and so much easier than working with 50 parties of 2. So we having been in the passenger vessel industry, we were not in the restaurant industry, so we really didn't know a lot about making food and being efficient with food service. So we partnered with those who are experts in that field. So we have a couple Let Us Entertain You restaurants, Harry Carey's restaurant, and a few other, some women-owned ventures and minority-owned ventures, so that we can offer a full array of food for your event. And our boat operations side of it does not get involved.
Yeah,
So
very,
that's really proved to be unique because people get off the boat at the end of their party and they say, gee, I didn't expect the food to be good.
right. Because you relied on a good restaurant.
Exactly, exactly. So we don't compete with restaurants. We offer a completely different experience where you really don't even need much entertainment because the skyline is your entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing tourism numbers rival our post-pandemic numbers from 2019 during the summer 2023. Our Chicago hotels are seeing record numbers, especially last month, June. How does a tourism play into your tours? And do you see more residents or visitors taking the tours, or have you yourself seen an uptick this summer?
Yes, we are still in the recovery mode, but I think are coming to the end of the recovery mode and hopefully into the growth mode next year. So when the hotels are busy, we are busy. There's no doubt about that, and we appreciate that. Taylor Swift may have been the exception to that rule, but generally speaking, hotel guests like to take boat rides, and we work together on most occasions. We can track the zip codes of our customers, and surprisingly, we do have a lot of local customers who like to entertain their visiting friends and family. So we see a lot of local zip codes. And then also our customers seem to come from other urban centers. So New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Washington, DC are really high on our list. And I think that's because they live in an architecturally significant city and they appreciate it and they want to see other great pieces of architecture. So I would say it's probably 60% visitors and 40% residents. But there is one missing segment, and that is our international guests. They are only just slowly starting to venture back to the United States and to Chicago. Usually international visitors tend to visit the coast first, and then on their second visit, they'll visit Chicago. So we are ready and willing to serve them. We now have our commentary translated into 4 languages: Korean, Japanese, Spanish, and French. So we're ready for them, but we're hoping to see an uptick in the fall.
Yeah.
Generally,
Yeah, I
like
think
travel in the fall.
Yeah, traditionally, I think Europeans do like our August, September travelers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Um,
that's a great market for us, and we're still missing them.
yeah, and I was mentioning to you before we went on the Zoom this afternoon that I was out east and I was mentioning some friends who reside on the East Coast, and like, oh my gosh, I mean, they know everything great about the Chicago architecture, and they were really, really thrilled to take the architecture river tour a few years back when you're visiting Chicago. But what's kind of surprised me is they were just raving about the most unique part of their experience on your tour was going through the locks, just very briefly going through the locks, out a little bit past or out around Navy Pier and then coming back in. And they're just like, oh, Commissioner, make sure you mention that because we've never seen anything like that out of the East with with the big ocean. So tell us a little bit about the locks, and it has to be a unique experience, I guess. We take it for granted in Chicago because we know about that.
Sure. Well, a Mercury Chicago Skyline Cruiseline does a guided tour of the river and the lake. So on those tours, we have to traverse through the Chicago River locks. Our offices happen to be above the Riverwalk at 303 East Wacker Drive, and we have attached a camera to the window so that our captains can log into an app and see through that camera whether the doors are open or closed. And this helps give a little more smooth tour for the guests without having to wait so long for the lock gates to open. So the lock serves as an elevator for boats because the Lake Michigan flows into the Chicago River. And engineers designed this way back when cholera pandemic was killing the residents of Chicago because the river flowed into the lake, and the lake was our source of drinking water. So by building the locks and then also another set of locks downriver, they were able to reverse the flow of the river, and now the clean lake water flows into the river. And well, both bodies of water are clean now, but in the old days, it worked much better to prevent disease. So there's gates on the riverside and gates on the lake side. The boats go into the lock. They must tie up to the wall, because when the other gates open, there's a huge current in the lock. And so you want to keep your vessel safe up against the wall. And if you are a pleasure boat, you do need to put on your life jacket to be safe during that exercise, but commercial operators don't need to do that. And so after all the vessels are tied up, the gates behind the boats on the river close, and the gates on the lakeside slowly begin to open, and the water rises, the boats rise. And when that process is complete, takes about maybe 8 to 12 minutes. Then you untie your vessel and you go out onto the lake and enjoy that beautiful lakefront skyline. But they're owned and operated by the federal government, the Army Corps of Engineers. There's no fees to go through the locks. You just sort of pay with time, and you go through the locks and follow the rules. There is a lock dog that lives and works out at the locks. And a couple weeks ago, when our canine cruise was going through the locks, she got all excited because she loves to see all the dogs on the boat, and she actually fell into the lock. So our crew had to put out the rescue ladder and rescue the dog, and that was really a first for our team.
Tell our viewers today about you starting the
Canine cruise.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, well, after 9/11 and the airplanes stopped flying and people wondered if they would ever travel again, we looked around our neighborhood and saw so many high-rise apartment and condo buildings. We thought, well, how do we reach out to these people who are already here, even if they may have already taken a boat ride before? And we said, yes, let's encourage them to bring their dog. And we did that, and it's been quite a while since 9/11. And so every Saturday and Sunday, we have a canine cruise, and we point out the best fire hydrants and dog parks and riverside cafes, and people just love it.
Thank you for that. And also thank you for that was a great description about the locks. And for anyone listening today that has never been through the locks, I highly recommend it. And I actually would recommend it on one of the cruise lines. I have had the privilege of doing it on a smaller leisure boat, and not realizing like that's some serious muscle you have to have with your flotation device on as the boat's going like that. I mean, it's I highly recommend sitting back, relaxing on one of the commercial vessels.
Yes, and that's a good idea, but it's nice for everyone. Even boats come from Michigan or Indiana to see our city, and so we want to welcome them into the river as well.
Thank you for that. So social media in 2023 is obviously playing a huge impact, not only for businesses, for marketing, as a marketing tour to promote their business, but also do a lot of transactions. I just want to, if you can just kind of expand, you guys have been around for 80 plus years. How has this changed? How have you guys kept up with changes, and how has it benefited you? And what are kind of some of the top tips you give our listeners today?
Well, when I first started, we sold our tickets on a roll. So, if you
Like the carnival.
4 tickets. Well, they were custom printed and they did have the price and the name of the company on them. And if you wanted 4 tickets, we would pull off four tickets from the roll, and we have a little desktop counter and we would count 4 tickets, so we knew how many would be on the boat. Now, obviously, times have changed and people want to buy tickets while they're wearing their pajamas and, the middle of the night or in the morning. It's a nice day. Let's go online and buy some boat ride tickets, and they can choose their date and time, and it works out great. It works out great. They come on down and they have a QR code on their phone, and it's great. But also people can still buy a ticket at the spur of the moment, come down to the box office, and we always have tickets available the old fashioned way too, whether you pay in a credit card or debit card or cash. So it's definitely changed. We love interacting with the customer. So, we don't get to do that as much when they buy the ticket online, but we have to interact with them on our website, and we have to make it visually appealing. We have to provide video. We have to provide all the information, all the answers to all the questions. Especially, do you have restrooms on board? So, we take our websites very seriously, although we still do like brochures. But social media has encouraged businesses to really raise their level of customer service, because now, instead of getting a letter on your desk that they were unhappy with their experience, they are writing about it on their phone. And it really gives us an opportunity to up our game and improve based on customer feedback. And I think that all of our staff and crew are reminded of that and realize that, and it helps them give the best possible service to our guests. And we started a new product this year with the translation of the commentary, and this gives us an opportunity to spread that word through different channels of social media so that people already know about it when they get there.
That's nice. One question I just popped in my mind when you explained that. What impact does the weather, even during the nice summer months, have on your operations? Like we've had some really kind of crazy torrential rainstorms this summer. In fact, I was downtown one night the last couple of weeks. We even had the tornado sirens go off.
Definitely.
So how does that impact your overall operation?
Well, our captains have the up to the minute national weather on their phones, so they really they're probably reading the same radar weather that they read at O'Hare.
Yeah.
So we know about what time storms are going to hit. And now that we have a larger fleet, we as a company are much more flexible about, no problem if you want to come tomorrow instead of today, or if you want to wait an hour, come back when the storm is past. So that impacts us. We have an interior salon on all of our vessels that is climate controlled. So there's always a place of refuge for the guests if something comes up unexpected. Also, we, sometimes have really strong winds in Chicago, and all those glass buildings lining the river. We have to be careful about that. But generally speaking, the captain is the weatherman, and he will not take the ship out if it won't be safe.
That's great. Thank you for that. Thank you also for sharing insight into your business journey, and this unique business in the city of Chicago. That's the beauty about the city of Chicago. Is we have so many different kinds of businesses. So I'm glad we had this time to chat. Let me ask you a question. What when you're not running the business, what do you do to relax?
Okay, well, I'm a new grandmother. I have 2 new grandsons. They are 3 months apart, and they're not yet a year old. So that is my preferred way to spend any free time that I have. followed by walking my dog, and I really enjoy cooking, and I enjoy traveling and experiencing other travel attractions and experiences, and I love watching the news with what's going on with the airlines.
Yeah, yeah. As this webinar is entitled Empower Hour, please share a piece of advice that you can empower our attendees.
I would say, after 42 years of working and building a tourism business, I would say to be curious is my best advice. To always be curious, visit other businesses, hang around with people who have larger businesses, join trade associations, meet people in your neighborhood. You never know when you're going to find a synergy between another business. We had a supernatural cruise because I met someone who gave supernatural tours by bus. And I said, why don't you give a supernatural tour by boat? So you just never know, but you have to be out there. You have to meet people, and you might meet your next banker, but be curious of how other people do everything.
So when you're traveling and you're as a way to relax during your downtime, and you're going to a city with a river or with a body of water, is a boat tour absolutely a must so you can experience with other?
It is a must. It is first on our list, and I think when we look at the way people buy tickets to our attraction, I think they are buying our Chicago Architecture Foundation River Cruise aboard Chicago's First Lady tickets at the same time or just before they buy a Broadway in Chicago ticket. So
Oh, that's great.
we share many of the same customers with Broadway in Chicago.
That's a neat fact. Depending on your time, if you can stay a little longer, we'd love to take some questions from our audience.
Sure.
Artie, how are you doing? We have some questions.
Yes, good. Thank you very much, Holly. We do have a few questions for you. One, kind of a funny one, maybe. Is there a maximum size for dogs on that one cruise that you have with dogs?
The canine cruise? No, there's no maximum size. Just every dog needs to be on a leash, and most people bring only well-behaved dogs. So
good. Second question, can you talk more about the pros and cons of being a fourth generation family business?
Well, probably the number one con is that there is too many kitchen table meetings. It's really hard to separate, your family time from your business time. And I think that is a negative, but in business, you use every time, every minute that you have. The most positive thing about it is that, we've seen our boys, work their way up through the company, get an education, and find which of their expertise matches their management styles. And we have one son who's a little more on the technical side, and the other son who's more on the creative and marketing side. So together they make a great team, and they've built a great team, and we just love watching them grow and watching them grow the business.
Great. That kind of actually leads into the third question. About how big is your admin staff? Has it been similar for all 80 years? And what's the newest job that was created?
Okay, on the administrative side, everyone used to do their own administrative side. I mean, we all answered the phones, we all took messages, spoke to customers, whatever you need to do, all hands on deck. Now we are lucky enough to have someone who is an office manager, and he helps us very much, screen phone calls, and he plans we have a food challenge every month where there's a menu theme, say lemons, and everyone has to make a dish that includes lemons, and then we have judging and a winner. So that's a lot of fun in our office. And the newest position that we have created, I think, is a back of the house manager. So again, we're all used to doing things the old fashioned way. And if bartenders needed, more beer, they would have to go get it. And now I think we have a little more of a streamlined operation where they can text in their orders and a back of the house manager will bring it to them.
That's great. And then we've just got one final one, which is, what's your website?
Our website is mercurycruises.com. That's where you'll find the canine cruise and the urban adventure cruise that goes through the locks. And then cruisechicago.com will provide the schedule and ticketing options for the Chicago Architecture Foundation River Cruise, and also give you information on our fleet for planning a wedding or private party.
Awesome, Commissioner. That's all we got.
Thank you very much for that, Marty. Holly, also just let our viewers, listeners know today, where are the boats docked? And number two, if it's just a great afternoon, great Saturday, great day, and they just spontaneously want to take a river cruise, where would they go for that box up?
Okay, great. Well, we are located, we were the first tenant on the Chicago River back in the 1940s, but now we are located at Michigan Avenue and Wacker Drive on the southwest corner. So if you put it into GPS, it's 112 East Wacker. And you have to come down the stairs from upstairs, or you can also come all the way across the River Walk, whether you're starting at the lake or starting at Lake Street. And so right there, Michigan and Wacker, our box office is at the bottom of the stairs. And yes, you just about any day you can purchase a ticket on a whim.
That's great news. Thank you very much. Thank you, Holly, and thank you for all of our attendees,
Commissioner,
for joining today's Empower Hour. You can watch today's Empower Hour on our YouTube channel by visiting youtube.com/Chicago BACP. And for more information on our next Empower Hour, next month, August already, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Holly, I very, very much appreciate you taking the time out today to join us. And I know my public vehicle section always appreciates your leadership with all things on Chicago River, particularly with the commercial vessels. So thank you just for being a great partner to this department.
thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for keeping Chicago safe.
I appreciate it. We'll connect offline.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, everyone.